Hello, welcome to yet another episode of Historical Reflection. And today we are discussing a very important war. And as every time I say, definitely war are painful. There's the loss of war, but sometimes the war actually makes things, create things, and that establish the supremacy of the powerful. Right. So today we are discussing about the Alexander and the Porus face-off, and definitely both are individual great personalities, and that's why we call it a clash of titans. And when we are discussing about Alexander, we have to really discuss few aspect of historical context and. Let's begin with the what are those regions and what are those plus points which actually made this war a remembrance to, for people, for students and for people to remember the Alexander and the Porus, because they were both great kings and great personalities. The confrontation between Alexander the Great, as we call him, and the great king Porus occurred during Alexander's campaign to conquer Indian subcontinent. And in 3026 BC, Alexander, having already established his dominance over vast territories stretching from Greece to Persia, and sought to extend his empire further east. And his army, hardened by years of conquest, and entered into Punjab region, and entered and in the modern day India when we discuss the territories. So and India and Pakistan, where they encountered Porus, the ruler of kingdom between Jhelum and the Chenab river. Porus, known for his valor, for strategic acumen, and he didn't submitted to Alexander's demand for allegiance, unlike other local rulers who choose diplomacy and submission. Porus actually prepared for battle, for force, and he gathered all his force for the battle and determined to actually defend his motherland. And that is the stage which is set for the war between Alexander and the Porus. And that became an iconic confrontation when we talk about Alexander's war history, or the kind of battle he fought. Now, condition of the battle, which is very, very important, because battle took place during the monsoon season, and with heavy rain swelling the rivers. And somebody who's coming from Greece, it was altogether new terrain for a war. And the terrain was challenging for definitely, which was muddy fields and treacherous riverbank. And Alexander's army was not accustomed to this kind of scenario when or any kind of a war field. So there was new set of obstacles in the humid and wet conditions of Indian subcontinent. On the other hand, the Porus army was formidable, consisting of infantry, definitely cavalry and chariots. And the most important aspect of Porus army was the war elephant. And we had been discussing, we know about this whole scenario or this point when we talk about Alexander and the Porus, because that created an advantage of Porus upon the Alexander's army. Now, the elephant in particular was significant advantage for Porus, as they were unfamiliar to Alexander's forces or the army, and therefore actually all this war elephant actually created a psychological and tactical challenge for Alexander's army. Porus positioned his army strategically, using elephant as a living wall to protect his troops and intimidate the enemies. Whereas Alexander, who everybody knows, known for his tactical brilliance, and devised a plan to outmaneuver Porus. And that is where the whole thinking, the whole strategy actually worked for Alexander. He divided his forces, sending a contingent across the river under the cover of darkness, and attacked Porus from the rear. The maneuver was risky because there was already swollen rivers and the possibility of detection, because it's a huge area which can be seen far away from the enemy army, and the possibility, and then it proved, but actually for Alexander it proved a decisive factor in the battlefield. Then this battle is called as Battle of Hydaspes. The battle began with Alexander's forces launching a surprise attack on Porus' army. The Macedonian cavalry targeted Indian chariots which struggle in the muddy terrain. Meanwhile, Alexander infantry engaged Porus' forces head-on, using their long spears to counter the elephant. That is again a very decisive factor, which actually eventually resulted into benefit of Alexander. Despite the initial shocks, Porus' army fought very nicely, and the elephants caused significant casualty among the Macedonian ranks, and there were a lot of havoc and chaos created by elephant. However, Alexander troop adopted a quick target to target the elephant and handlers, and they also exploited the gaps in Porus' formation of army. The battle actually continued for really many hours, with both sides suffering a heavy losses. Porus himself fought bravely, leading his troops. Leading a troop from the front and inspiring them to resist the invader. However, Alexander's superior tactics and disciplined army eventually overwhelmed Porus' forces. Now, it is very important to actually discuss the face-off and how things actually very dramatically worked out in favor of both Alexander and Porus. After the battle, Porus was captured and fought and brought before Alexander. Despite his defeat, Porus maintained his dignity and composure, and actually that earned respect of Porus in front of Alexander. When he was asked, Porus was asked how he wished to be treated, and Porus famously replied like a king. And this response impressed Alexander, who admired Porus' courage and leadership. So a whole scenario actually worked for both the leaders, and recognizing Porus' potential as an ally, Alexander chose to restore his kingdom and even expanded his territories, and Porus became a vassal king under Alexander's rule, governing his land with autonomy. There was no pressure of Alexander as such, while later on we see kings who became vassal, they have certain aspect to be actually controlled by the victorious king. So while supporting he also in return supported Alexander in the campaign. Now, before going further, it is very essential to really discuss the strategies of both both kings, both great leaders, Alexander as well as Porus. So let's begin with the Porus strategies of the war, which eventually gained him victory. First is deceptive maneuver. Alexander used deception to confuse Porus about his intentions, and for days he actually attempted to cross the river and keep Porus forces on high alert. This tact actually exhausted Porus troops, and eventually they already have a false sense of security. So that is one very crucial strategy. Then there was the strategy of night crossing. So under the cover of darkness during a storm, Alexander led the contingent on his army to cross the river as an unguarded point. And this risky maneuver actually allowed him to surprise Porus' army, and which was an unexpected attack on Porus' army. Now, Alexander also divided the forces. One force actually split into the groups. One group he himself led that group, crossed the river to launch a direct attack, while the other leader remained on the western bank to create diversion and prevent Porus from retreating. So that is second, a very, very crucial strategy. Cavalry superiority. Definitely Alexander and cavalry, they go hand in hand, because his cavalry was one of the best contingent. And Alexander cavalry played a crucial role in this battle too. He used his horsemen to force, against Porus and target vulnerable, very soft units, and such as chariot, and which actually eventually struggled in the muddy terrain. So that is third one. And targeting elephant, which is very crucial for Alexander, because as we have discussed earlier also, that was a new kind of contingent for the Alexander army. The Macedonian troop actually adapted quickly to challenge the challenge posed by Porus' army war elephant. They target the elephant and handlers and use their long spear to wound the animal and causing chaos within Porus' war elephant ranks. Now, these are few main points which goes best for Alexander and his army. But the whole war is not complete when we discuss, when we know about the Porus strategies. Now, definitely elephant group or elephant contingent is really a very, very important aspect of this war. The Porus deployed his elephant as a living wall to protect his infantry, as well as intimidate the Macedonian forces. And initially that happened too. The elephant was psychological weapon, as Alexander troops had never encountered such a beast in battle. Now, strategic positioning of Porus is very important. Porus positioned his army along the river bank, using natural barrier of to his advantage, and this forced Alexander to devise a complex plan to cross the river and engaged with his army. Then one of the very prominent is resilient defense. Despite being outmaneuvered, Porus actually troop fought very, very very bravely, and using their knowledge of the terrain and to encounter Alexander's advances. The elephant caused a significant casualty among the Macedonian rank before being neutralized. So these are few aspects which are very crucial for this war. And so this war has a far-reaching effect on Indian subcontinent, and that is inevitable with to discuss. We have to discuss the legacy of this war. The encounter between Alexander and Porus, remember, as a movement of mutual respect between two great leaders, two great kings. It marks the easternmost extent of Alexander's conquest as his army later on, because that is the point. Till that point, Alexander's army came, but after that they refused to march further into India, because they have already tired. They had a huge days and history of war from Greece. So the battle and its aftermath demonstrated Alexander's ability to balance the conquest and diplomacy, forging alliances and strengthening his empire. Now, on the other hand, Porus' legacy, though largely recorded in the Greek sources, remains a testament of resilience and the valor of Indian rulers in the face of foreign invasion. Porus' courage and leadership earned Alexander's respect, leading to diplomatic resolution where Porus retained his kingdom and became an ally on his terms. The Battle of Hydaspes stands as a symbol of clash between two civilizations. Definitely a very, very important war. And it also endures the spirit of leadership, courage. The battle is often cited as a masterpiece of a military strategy, showcasing Alexander's tactical brilliance and Porus' resilience. So this is the important war, and that this war actually brought many changes in Indian subcontinent later years. So this is I want to discuss this war, and that has created a certain type of cultural, intellectual, and of course military upliftment in this region. So look forward for your comments and anything you want to add to this war, because this is a war which which is actually fought a clash of titans, and it's created a far-reaching effect. And sometimes these effects we can also discuss, and we can find out in the culture and military aspect of Indian subcontinent. See you again in the next episode of War. Till then, have a nice time. Bye bye. See you.